decided time to stop being a coward and make the video I want to make. Let me adjust the webcam a little bit there so you can see. Ooh, we got the All Might shirt on deck. So you guys have kind of been spoiled on what at least one of the entries will be, but I'm doing my video on my top 10 anime series. Now, before we get into this, I am an extremely casual anime watcher, so I want to get out, just get that out ahead of time. Most of what I watch is not anime, and a lot of what I do watch is more of the mainstream sort of stuff, I suppose you could say, so don't get mad at me if my picks aren't like hardcore anime fan picks. I just wanted to do this because I've already done my top 10 movies and my top 10 TV shows, so I thought here we could kind of complete the series. And I am doing anime series, so I'm not doing anime movies. These are just ongoing TV series. Okay, without further ado, we are going to get to my number 10, which is probably one that is going to be way out of left field for everybody. But my number 10 is Peach Girl. Peach Girl. So this one has kind of an odd story behind it of why I like it. But Peach Girl was sort of the first anime that I watched when I was no longer like a preteen. You know, when I was like 8, 9, 10, I was watching like Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that, and I was like, yeah. But I think I watched Peach Girl when I was a little bit older, maybe around 14 or 15. And it kind of got me both back into anime a little bit, and then also made me realize that, like, it's not just for children. So Peach Girl is, like, it's been a little while since I've watched it, but basically, well, to continue that story, my friend and I went over to my friend's house, and he and I watched the entire series of Peach Girl in one night. We were like enthralled with the story and the drama, and we had to see it out through to the end. So that's why it's my number 10 here. I have a lot of good memories attached to the series. I even wrote like a script for the first episode because I wanted to translate it into like a live action thing when I was in high school. But I just have a lot of good memories attached to this show. It's like a very dramatic, like high school love triangle, maybe even like a love square type of thing, where, you know, there's not a lot of fighting and that stuff. It's mostly like high school drama, stuff like that. Your main characters, you have Momo and Sai, the two girls, and they're like competing for these guys, Kairi and Toji, and like them dealing with crushes and dating and you know, just all the typical high school drama stuff. Sai is like kind of like the rich, mean girl, popular girl. Momo is on the swim team, and she has like very tan skin, which is kind of like a faux pas, and she kind of gets made fun of it for it a little bit and stuff. So very interesting series. I'm definitely not doing it any justice, just fumbling my way through it based off, you know, decades old memories, but I feel like maybe a little bit underrated. Definitely something I enjoyed, but maybe it's just because of the memories I have attached to it. Okay, moving on, number 9. And this is a more recent entry. I've only recently been getting into this show, which is why it's currently only sitting at number 9. But this is Baki, And I know there's a few different series of Baki. There's Baki the Grappler, there's the Netflix series, which is this one here, that's the main one I've seen, but I've been working my way through this show, and I am enthralled with this show. I love it. I'm a big fan of combat sports. I'm a big fan of, like, bodybuilding and aesthetics and that stuff. And they combine those two premises in this series, and there's just a brutality and a violence to this series that, like, I've never seen before, really, especially not in a more mainstream anime. Like, the blood, the crunching of bones, just the death and destruction in Baki is just insane. The premises behind the Netflix series here is there's this, like, underground fighting tournament, and all the best fighters from all around the world enter it. They're fights to the death, and you have these, like, death row inmates who break out of prison to go fight in this tournament. And the intro to this series is like the opening scene where you see all the different death row inmates breaking out to go fight in the tournament. Is like one of the coolest sequences I've ever seen. And obviously Baki is the main character, but my favorite character in this series is his dad, Yujiro Hanma, who is also called the Ogre, who is just like, he's undefeatable in combat. He's gigantic. He's just a monster. He can defeat, like, entire military units all by himself. Just absurd power levels and violence in this, and it is an absolute treat to watch. If you're into violence, gore, combat, things like that, and just extraordinarily muscled men beating each other up, then if you like those sort of things, Baki is right in your wheelhouse. Number 8, Inuyasha. I grew up in the Adult Swim Toonami era of Cartoon Network. I was born in 1994, so as I was growing up, a lot of the anime and stuff like that was being put on Cartoon Network, and Inuyasha is one of those shows that I grew up with being shown on Toonami and Adult Swim. And as a younger kid, or like a preteen, early teenager who was really into that dark kind of occult aesthetic, I loved the imagery of this show. I loved the storylines in this show, the demons, the dark, sort of horror imagery in this show. I really loved it. The lore behind the show, and the integration of, like, the modern Japanese culture with the feudal Japanese past, with some of those, like folklore and tall tales mixed in a historical context. I've always, the something about the setting of Inuyasha has always just been amazing to me. And for shows that I have favorite characters, I did it with Baki. I'm going to do it with Inuyasha as well, and any of the other shows going forward that have, a quite large ensemble cast. My favorite character in Inuyasha is definitely Sesshomaru. I have a Sesshomaru pin somewhere. There's like a pin you put on a lanyard or a backpack or something. I have a Sesshomaru pin, but I'm not sure where it is exactly. But yeah, I have always loved Sesshomaru, and I've always loved the dichotomy of having Inuyasha, who is the good guy. He has the Tetsaiga, which does, it can kill 1,000 men with one slash, things like that, and it's very destructive, and it, just kills everything in its path. And then Sesshomaru, who is, painted, he's the bad guy, he's the antagonist. He has the Tensaiga, and the Tensaiga can bring people back to life. It restores health and all this stuff. So Sesshomaru wants Inuyasha's sword, and that's a lot of the show is, Sesshomaru trying to get the dead Saiga, the two brothers feuding, and then, all the while there's this big bad guy, Naraku, behind the scenes. It's been a little while since I've watched it. I definitely need to go back and do another watch through of Inuyasha, so I'm a little iffy on some of the finer details, but absolutely amazing show. And when I was a kid, back in the PlayStation 2 era of video games, there was a Inuyasha JRPG for the PS2 that I used to play all the time. The storyline was like a little iffy. I think the storyline was like, you were kind of taking the place of Kagome, like you fall through the well and go into the world and do all that stuff, and you make like a custom character. But it was for me, a child at the time, like the show was a fun game, and Inuyasha, I feel like, has kind of become underrated as we get further and further out from, when it was on the air, because I think it's been off the air for quite a while now, so I feel like the further we get from it, the less people talk about it, and the more underrated it's become, but I've always loved Inuyasha. Number 7, Dragon Ball Z. And this might be a little controversial with it being this low. Dragon Ball Z is like the first anime I ever got into. Especially, like I said, being a child of the 90s, early 2000s, Dragon Ball Z was everywhere. It was on TV. And that's not to say I don't love Dragon Ball Z. I do. I absolutely love Dragon Ball Z. I've watched the entire series multiple times. I've seen all the movies. I've seen a couple of the movies in the theaters. The more recent ones. I don't have it right here with me, but I have a few of the movies on Blu-ray. But I think my problem with Dragon Ball Z is going through and watching it now. There's so much filler, and obviously you have things like Kai and all that, but as I've gotten older, I've kind of been seeing more of the flaws in Dragon Ball Z, and although it's like a pioneer, and it's one of those things that kind of set the standard for what a shonen anime should be like, as I've gotten older, it's just kind of fallen down my rankings a little bit more and more, because I think the shows that have come after Dragon Ball Z have kind of built on the foundation that it built, and then kind of improved upon the formula a little bit. But, I don't know, that's just me. Like I said, I still love Dragon Ball Z. I love the world. I love the setting, all that stuff, the characters. My favorite character is Trunks, by the way. Trunks. I always wished that I had silver hair, like when I was in school, and even still I kind of think about it sometimes, dyeing my hair like platinum silver, like maybe Sephiroth looking silver, or Trunks obviously, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of felt bad about putting it at 7, but I couldn't really justify putting it higher than any of the entries that come after it. Obviously an iconic show, and like a cultural icon and a cultural touchstone. Like most people, like if you ask most people what anime comes to mind when they hear the word anime, a lot of people will think Dragon Ball Z. And for a lot of people, especially like men, like 18 to 35-ish year old men, they like Dragon Ball Z, and that's it when it comes to anime, just because like that's the thing on air growing up, and yeah, but so I think it's like both overrated a little bit, but then because it's overrated, it's also kind of underrated by people who hate on it for being so popular. But I'm not going to get into all that. That's just a totally random tangent that has nothing to do with what I was talking about. Anyways, we move on to number 6, which is My Hero Academia. This isn't a show that I'd watched until earlier this year. My roommate actually got me into it, and I immediately, like from episode 1, fell in love with the show. I mean, as you can see, I got my boy All Might right here. And yes, All Might is my favorite character in My Hero Academia. I just love, how boisterous he is, and then obviously him being like huge and jacked, and his powers, and like, the smashes and all that stuff. Like, I love All Might. The thing I really like about My Hero Academia is it kind of takes that shonen formula, right? But it does it so tightly. Like, one thing I noticed watching it through is that it kind of flies by. There is not a lot of downtime, and there is not a lot of filler. Like, when you watch Naruto, there is so much filler in Naruto. You can find episode guides online that tells you to just skip like 10 to 20 episodes at a time, because it's all just filler. Like, I'm saying with like One Piece, same with, even Dragon Ball Z a little bit. There's so much filler and garbage that doesn't matter in those shows that you can just cut out hours worth of content and not watch it, and you don't miss anything. That's not the case with My Hero Academia. My Hero Academia is like tight. There's always something going on. There's always action. The story is always progressing, and that's something I really appreciate about the show. Is like, it just keeps your attention, and it doesn't waste your time when you watch it. And plus, I love the superhero setting. I've always liked superheroes. Obviously, I'm a Marvel fan, DC fan. I collect comic books. So seeing, like a Japanese take on superheroes, I think is extremely interesting. And the whole idea around like a world where having superpowers is kind of just a normal thing is very interesting. And then having the schools and like these national tournaments and hero groups and all that stuff, it's very cool. I love the setting of the show. And like I said, from minute 1 of episode 1, it just gripped my attention, and I ran away with it. I was hooked immediately. Okay, so that rounds out my bottom 5. Now we are getting into my top 5 with number 5, Gundam. This is kind of just like a blanket Gundam. I love all Gundam. Give me giant robots in space. Give me, the original series. Unicorn, Gundam Wing, 0087, I think that's what it is. MS Team. Anything. But if I had to pick one favorite series, and I know it's one that is derided by a lot of fans, and that is Mobile Fighter G Gundam, which kind of is an outlier as far as Gundam series goes. It's like a fighting tournament, hand-to-hand combat between the Gundam suits. But maybe it's because it was the series that was on Toonami and Adult Swim when I was, a teenager, so that's why I like it. But Mobile Fighter G Gundam has always been my favorite. I love the Rose Gundam. I actually had like a little figure of the Rose Gundam when I was a kid. But if I had to pick a favorite character, it'd probably be Domankashu and the Shining Gundam. My very first Gunpla kit I bought was the Shining Gundam. And unfortunately, they don't make like very many models of it. I think there's only one on the market, and it's quite a few years old at this point, so it's kind of outdated as far as Gunpla goes. But Shining Gundam is easily my favorite Gundam suit. I love the shining finger. Like my hand glows with, with great burning power, something power. And obviously using the power of Kyoji. Just so many fantastic memes from Mobile Fighter G Gundam. I understand it's not a fan favorite. A lot of people, especially in my generation, they grew up with Gundam Wing. I've always kind of found Gundam Wing a little like cringy and edgelordish a little bit, especially Death Scythe, but yeah, Mobile Fighter G Gundam, that is my jam, but give me any Gundam and I'm happy. Giant robots in space fighting each other is something I will always be up for. And I really want to get out someday to Japan and see the giant, full-scale Gundam, go eat at the Gundam Cafe. Definitely on my bucket list. Death Note. If you would have asked me maybe even 5 years ago, this probably would have been number 1 on my list. But like 2 years ago or so, I went through and did a complete rewatch of Death Note. And although I do still think it holds up, and I still think it's one of the best anime ever made, honestly, I do have some issues with it. I think that after the arc, after L dies, after Light kills L, it kind of goes off the rails for a little bit before sticking the landing at the end. And I don't know, that knocked it down a little bit in my book on the rewatch, noticing that. L is my favorite character in Death Note. That's probably a little cliche. I don't know if you can see it. Let me pan over. Yeah, you can see it. I have an L plushie right there on my shelf. So if you guys have ever wondered what that plushie is of back there, that is L. But yeah, like it's obviously like, definitely one of the most popular series, and when people talk about the best anime shows of all time, Death Note is always in the conversation. It's always one of those ones that people throw around. Obviously it's in my top 5. I think it's fantastic, but on the rewatch, I really found myself just kind of having to force myself to get through the episodes. After L's death, I think there's kind of a significant drop in quality after that. Maybe that's just me being blinded by liking the character, I don't know, and feel free to disagree in the comments down below. But yeah, for me, number 4, Death Note. Number 3, Naruto. Specifically, Naruto Shippuden. I know I kind of slagged off Naruto earlier, talking about all the filler and everything, and I do think the filler is a problem. It's I don't know, but I'm at the point where I've watched it all. I've watched all the original series. I've watched all Shippuden. So now if I'm rewatching it, I either just go rewatch the episodes I want to rewatch or the arcs I want to rewatch, or I just skip through the filler. And for me, Naruto is still like one of those shonen that it's infinitely rewatchable for me. The characters are compelling, the story is compelling. Maybe it's a little cliche at this point, I know. A lot of people have issues with Naruto, and a lot of people have issues with how Shippuden turned Naruto into like Dragon Ball Z beam battles, and all of the stealth and subterfuge and things from the original Naruto series kind of went out the window. Compare the fight where you have Kakashi versus Abusa versus Naruto and Sasuke versus Madara, and it's like if you sat 2 people down and had them watch Kakashi versus Abusa, then had them watch Naruto and Sasuke versus Madara, and I feel like a lot of people would think it's not the same show, because really it's not the same show at the end. A lot of some of the core concepts from the original series go out the window for Shippuden, and I understand that criticism, and I kind of see it a little bit myself as well, but I still love Naruto, and I still love Shippuden, and I can't help but love it. I've played what do I have it here? Yeah, I have played the absolute hell out of this game and all the Naruto video games. I think they're a lot of fun, and just the entire setting of the show is just one that's very engrossing to me and very compelling for me. So it's one of those things that I'll always enjoy. And my favorite character, it's really hard. I think you guys have probably seen it in a couple of my videos. I have this Kakashi like graffiti art up here. But my favorite character is a tie between Kakashi and Minato. I cannot decide. Like, I'll flip-flop. There'll be some days where I'm like, my favorite character is Kakashi. And there'll be other days where I'll be like, my favorite character is Minato. So I've kind of just accepted that it's kind of a tie. I can't decide between the two of them, and I don't think I'll ever be able to. Number 2, Trigun. Yes, Trigun. This is one that I do not see talked about very much anymore. Another one of those shows I grew up with watching on Toonami when I was a kid. And this is a show that really, really stuck in the back of my head. And I've never been able to get Trigun out of my head. I've always loved this show. I love the setting. I love that, sort of space western setting. I love the characters, the story. And I think Trigun does the whole, main character who doesn't kill thing better than any other show I've ever seen. Because you have the main character, Vash the Stampede, the humanoid typhoon. He's extremely powerful. He could kill anybody he wanted to. The drop of a hat, and he demonstrates how strong and powerful he is multiple times to the shock of the people who he is going against. But he still has this strong moral code. In the whole show, he has a $60 billion double dollar bounty on his head, and all these bounty hunters are coming after Vash the Stampede to try to collect all this money. It's this huge bounty, and there's all this death and destruction that comes in his wake, but as you see it unfold, you realize that it's not him who's committing all the death and destruction. It's the people who are coming after him to try and capture him, and there's a very interesting sort of commentary there in that regard. And he has this very intense and interesting relationship with his brother Knives, and they have this final confrontation at the end of the show that's just the visuals of that final confrontation are seared into my brain. With the big laser shot up into the sky and all that, and it's a very intense series. I think it's not a very long series, I don't think. I think I'm gonna do a quick Google here. I want to see how many episodes are in Trigun. I think, like I said, I don't think it's very long. Yeah, it is only 26 episodes, so it's one of those things you could get through in a week or two if you sat down and watched 1 or 2 episodes a day. And it's compelling enough of a story where you would feel the desire to continue to watch it day after day. And this is the one show on this list. Well, actually, this and the next one, but this is on where if you have never seen Trigun before, I would really, really strongly recommend that you go out and watch Trigun. Right now, just go watch the first episode and just see if it speaks to you on some level, because it spoke to me on some level, and I think it's one of the most underrated animes out there. You don't really see people talking about it much anymore. I mean, it's been off the air for, when did it come out? 1998, so it's been off the air for over 20 years now, so I mean, it's kind of understandable that people aren't talking about it, but it's such a good show, and please, at least go watch the first episode, see what you think. But okay, we have gotten to this point. We are at the number 2 spot. We've gotten, 10 through 2 done. So now, it is time for number 3 to 1, let's jam Cowboy Bebop. Maybe a cliche number 1 pick. I'm sure you ask a lot of people what their favorite anime is. A lot of them will say Cowboy Bebop. Interestingly, Cowboy Bebop and Trigun both kind of came out around the same time. They have a similar animation style, and also they're both space westerns. So maybe that's kind of why they're 1 and 2 in my mind. But I mean, what really needs to be said about Cowboy Bebop at this point? A lot of people consider this the greatest anime ever made. The live action, I tried to give it a chance. I have a video on this channel reviewing the first 2 episodes of the live action series, but that went off the rails quickly. And it's just, Cowboy Bebop is iconic for a reason. It's such an emotional story, and it captures so much, and it really uses the medium of animation in a way that is just unparalleled. And there's just something so unique about this show. It has this sort of nihilistic hopefulness about it, which is very oxymoronic, but I definitely think it's a term that applies to Cowboy Bebop. And you're sort of telling this hopeless love story that I think is very relatable for a lot of people in a way. And it's just one of those ones, like with Trigun. If you've never seen Cowboy Bebop, I implore you to go out, watch the first episode, and just enjoy, again, what most people consider the greatest anime ever made. Just unparalleled storytelling. And one thing I've always loved about Cowboy Bebop is it really, I'm big into filmmaking and film and storytelling and all that. And one of the first things you're told as a storyteller is show, don't tell. But it's one of the hardest things to get right. It is so hard to not just tell your audience what you want to tell them, and instead force them to, figure it out themselves using visual cues and things. But Cowboy Bebop, perfected the art of showing instead of telling. And I think it's people throw the word masterpiece around a lot, but I definitely think Cowboy Bebop is worthy of the title of masterpiece. There's some obvious omissions to this list that I assume a lot of people are going to point out. Attack on Titan, I was never really able to get into it. Demon Slayer, I watched the first season and I just couldn't do it. It wasn't compelling to me. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, watched the first few episodes, wasn't really for me. So I know those are some pretty big omissions from this list that maybe some of you will have an issue with not being on here, but it is what it is. This is my list, and but I would love to hear your guys' lists in the comments down below. What you thought of this list I just made, what you think of these picks. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think about my top 10 list? I'd love to hear any feedback. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this every single day. Until next time, guys. Bang.